Hello, my name is Robyn Albers. I'm a senior instructor in the College of Business at Zayed University, which is in Abu Dhabi, the United Arab Emirates. I was asked to deliver this e-lecture by Geert Jacobs, president of ABC, and he said that I could talk about anything related to ABC. So what I did is I went and listened to a few of the lectures that have already been posted on the e-lecture series. And I came across this presentation by Ron Dulick. He teaches at the University of Alabama, and his presentation was on reflecting on 50 years of teaching business communications. It was a really interesting and fun lecture. I highly recommend it. Anyway, in his lecture, he was talking about joy. And he was talking about the joy that he gets from teaching business communications. And that really resonated with me because he was showing us that we have the amazing opportunity to provide students with practical knowledge so that they can take chances in the classroom. They can experiment at university. They can make mistakes without serious consequences. So that gave me the idea for this presentation. In 2017, I was very honored to win distinction in the Practice of Diversity and Inclusion Award. Here's a picture of me with then President Deborah Roebuck and Peter Carden, who generously sponsored the award. And I received this award for how I have students engage in community project-based learning. So I thought maybe you would like to hear about it and maybe you can use it in your own classrooms. So to go through this, I thought the 5 W's of community project-based learning is a great way to explain what it is and how to do it. So let's start with what. Well, what is community project-based learning? I ask my students, I give them this task: find a need in your community and use business communication to help fix that need. So here are some examples of past projects. Some students chose to work with hospitals. One group of students collected books for pediatric patients. Other groups chose to do blood drives. Some students went to visit the elderly or children in hospitals and brought them gifts or flowers just to spend time with them. Another group of students had a really interesting idea where they contacted a local toy store, well, 2 local toy stores, Hamleys and the ELC, and they created a campaign where people would donate toys at the toy store, and they were able to collect over 200 gifts for children at the hospital. This hospital is the Sheikh Khalifa Hospital in Abu Dhabi. Other students liked working with organizations because they felt it was easier in a way because the organizations already existed. So some students raised money for Operation Smile. Other students found a child through Make-A-Wish and granted their wish. I remember one time they took a child who had a brain tumor to a local furniture shop, and they outfitted her whole room. The little girl chose a princess theme, and it was just beautiful. Other students work with Red Crescent. You would be familiar with Red Cross. And others work with Ihwa, which is a shelter for victims of human trafficking. It really is all up to the students. Sometimes students choose to help neighbors. This is Haya in the top left, and she helped one of her neighbors put a roof on their house. She bought clothes for the children. Other students get to know people who live in their community but are expats. So this says some of the girls were collecting food and clothes for the laborers in the United Arab Emirates, which is a lovely idea. One of my favorite projects was done by the male students, and they organized a picnic between the College of Business faculty and students. So in the top left-hand corner, you see that the students had organized a beautiful tent with the carpet, can you imagine, on the sand? And they're talking with their accounting teacher, Dr. Osama, and Dr. Kaleem. And it's just a very relaxed chance for us to share our own cultures. The top right picture is of my little boy and one of my students. They brought horses, they brought falcons, they danced for us, they shared their food. It was just a wonderful opportunity to spend time with the students in a more informal way. It is all very nice that they are meeting and helping people from all over their community, meeting diverse groups of people. But I suppose you are probably wondering, how is this related to business communication? Well, this is the second part of the what, and that is the methodology. I use this project to practice what is taught in the classroom. It gives students a chance to practice business communication consequence-free to some degree. I always start the semester with teaching emails. Like any teacher, we teach the format, we analyze the purpose, we analyze the audience, and we write with audience benefits, hopefully. And what I've found is that students often start with what I'm teaching them. They do the test, but then they don't implement it in their everyday life. But with this project, it actually forces them to do that. So, for example, when I'm teaching the format 2, CC, BCC, and subject lines, the students are starting to remember to CC their group members when they're writing an email to me. When they're doing their emails and they're thinking about their subject lines, they're making very clear, purposeful subject lines that are concise, and their opening lines make very clear requests or very clear answers. They also start to really analyze their audience and write with audience benefits. I remember one situation where the students were supposed to have a bake sale, and so they wrote to facilities to have their tables set up. And they wrote, "Dear facilities, please set up for our bake sale. Attached is the approval letter from our teacher." And facilities wrote back and said, "Well, that's great that you have approval, but what do you need? When do you need it? What day? Where should we set it up? How many chairs?" And then the students came back to me and went, "Oh, miss, this is what you're talking about with audience benefits. We have to think about how to make the person agree with our request." So as you can see, they were making small mistakes, not too much of a problem, and learning from these mistakes. We also did reports in class, so many different types of reports with this project, and they'd have to think about the format. Should it be written in email format, letter format, memo format? So we begin with proposals, and we get the students to write a proposal for their project. So we now use that for memo format. Halfway through the semester, they have to write progress reports. So naturally, they write progress reports about what they have done so far in their project. At the end of the semester, they do information reports where they include photos and lots of stories about this project in report format for me. And I really enjoy reading their report. At the end of the semester, we always end with presentations, and I love listening to their presentations because they're authentic. The students are really proud of their work. They know how to capture the audience's attention and to keep that attention by building rapport using real photographs, video, music, really clear bullet points. Their PowerPoints are so dynamic that sometimes I find myself fascinated and forget to take notes to provide feedback on their presentation. On a few occasions, I've actually burst into tears because I was just so proud of their work. Then, of course, throughout the semester, we get what we call on-the-job experience. So they're working on their interpersonal skills, or what we call soft skills. They're working with teams, they're working with time management, nonverbal communication, real problem solving. So to summarize what this project entails, it's a project chosen by the students to help their own community and to practice their business communication skills. They can practice and they can make mistakes, but there are little to no consequences, which is what I love and which is what Ron was talking about in his lecture. This brings me to the second part of my presentation, which is the who of community project-based learning. There are a lot of people involved in this project: students, the university, receivers, and of course the teacher. Here's a photo of our students at Zayed University. You'll notice that you can't see any of their faces, and that's on purpose because it's against the rule, or it's against the culture, to take pictures of female Emiratis. Anyway, most of our classes have 20 to 30 students in a class, and I find that 3 to 5 students maximum is a perfect number. It's a nice idea to establish a group leader for each project, and also a class leader, just for better communication. Usually the group leader gets an extra grade on top of their final grade, and the class leader gets an extra 3 points. It's also really important to establish a code of conduct and to ensure that everyone realizes that a paper trail is absolutely essential if they want to deal with students who are not participating at the end of the semester. Of course, the university usually wants to be involved as well because it involves community engagement. This is a picture of Zayed University. It's quite futuristic, isn't it? Anyway, the students should start by writing a proposal to the instructor, and then the students can get approval from the dean or even higher. We did this one semester by each group writing an email to the dean for approval, but it was just far too overwhelming. So now what we do is we create a class memo and have an executive summary so that the dean can sign off on the projects. The people benefiting from this project should also be contacted, the receivers. We need to ensure that the project is acceptable to them and they're willing to accept this type of help. If you're working with a hospital or a school or any other type of organization, it's a really good idea for the instructor to send a thank you letter or a thank you email with an explanation of the project and provide contact information should anything go wrong. What I'm going to play right now is just a little excerpt of one of my students' presentations where they put music to a photograph that they'd taken of me. And then the teacher. It's a lot of work. You become a project manager for each group. So I teach 5 sections of Business 207 or business communication, and usually in each class there are 5 groups. So I've become the project manager for 25 projects, and it can be overwhelming, but it's so worth it. You make such a huge difference to the students and the community that I think it's worth the work involved. And this brings me to the next part of the presentation, which is when. How long does this project last? Well, it's a semester-based project, so it's approximately 10 to 12 weeks. It's a good idea to start after the add drop period so that groups remain stable, and of course finish with presentations. I've had students do poster presentations in the past, and I had an idea to do Oscar awards from listening to someone do a My Favorite Assignment at the last conference. And in-class group presentations are really nice at the end of the project. I do have an idea of making sustainable projects that run from semester to semester, which would make things a lot easier to avoid the startup process. However, if I did that, then I wouldn't be able to give students the opportunity to choose their own projects. Where do these projects happen? Well, anywhere. Anywhere students can get hands-on experience. So it could be the streets, could be in hospitals, Could be in churches. That would be a great idea for a lot of people because churches are always looking to help out with people and would have ideas of who to help. Schools are great. I'm not sure about the ability to get into schools these days, but here in the UAE, it's not usually a problem. So start with simple ideas. You could have students organize a clothes drive or food drive and give the food and clothes to homeless people on the streets. Create a thank you letter campaign for people on your campus to encourage a feeling of well-being. You could do reading programs with youth, book exchange programs in different coffee shops, collect old phones and give them to people who need phones, maybe even organize a fun game night on campus. They don't have to involve money. These ideas do not have to involve money. It just needs to have an idea that includes a lot of communication and a lot of organization. And this brings me to the most important part, which is the why we need to do these projects, or why I think it's important. Because these projects bring so much joy, which is exactly what Ron was talking about in his presentation. It gives students a real sense of accomplishment. In this photo, you'll see Noura and Fatima. They collected it. They were a group of 4 girls, and they collected 93,000 dirham, which is approximately 30,000 US dollars. It's amazing what they can accomplish, and they're so proud of themselves. And again, it's not about the money. It's about what they accomplish. They can get recognition in the news. So every time the students see pictures of their names in the news, they get really excited, and it's something that they can use on their CVs. Here the students were competing to draw smiles on children's faces. This is from our internal Zayed University newspaper. Here students gathered and noticed the cleaners in the university. All of the people in pink are the cleaners of the university, and they collected money and gave them a bonus worth their 1 month salary. That group of girls, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 girls, amazing. And they surpassed their own expectations. Usually they start these these projects saying, I can't possibly do something like this. It really helps the students because my students especially have never had the opportunity to have a summer job, part-time work. They're very protected, so doing something like this really boosts their self-esteem, and they realize that they have power. I'd like to end my presentation with something that Albert Einstein said. He said, I never teach my pupils, I only provide the conditions in which they can learn. Well, clearly, I'm not even close to as smart as Albert Einstein, so I have to do both. I need to teach my students, and I need to provide them the conditions in which they can learn. And I saw this in one presentation that one of the girls did. My students are very, very much motivated by grades. And she started her presentation saying, Miss, when I started the project at the beginning of the semester, all I cared about was an A. And last night when I was reflecting, I thought that grades don't matter for a project like this. I have learned so much, and I am so proud of what I have done. And truly, a grade does not reflect the learning that I have experienced. So I hope that you can take this type of a project and think about applying it in your own teaching experience. If you have any questions at all, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about that. You can reach me at robyn.albers@zu.ac.ae, or my LinkedIn address is just Robyn Albers. Thank you.